Hi everyone, it's Swank Ivy with another Letters to an Asexual. This is number 117. Today I'm going to talk about hormones. If you are an asexual person who has ever come out to anyone, it's most likely that you've heard a question about getting your hormones checked, and of course I have covered the hormone question in some of my other videos, but today I'm going to talk about it as a tool that others will levy against us as an expression of not really understanding what asexuality even is. We say it's an orientation, and they immediately say that's a biological problem. They don't even understand what we're saying it is, but they go off on a tangent thinking they sound real scientific and educated about hormones or physical disorders. Which, let's be clear, you can have both. You can both be asexual and have a sexual disorder or a hormone issue. It's not that asexuality is only part of the life of people who don't have any of those other issues, and it can't be explained by or interacted with by any of these other physical conditions. But the fact remains that asexuality is not defined by being a hormonal issue. So, today, I'm going to, with the assistance of my new reading glasses, do you like them? I think they're really cute. I'm going to read the small print here that I'm no longer that great at seeing because I'm getting old over here, and so is this argument. So I'm going to read an argument that I received that I can't believe I haven't read before, but I checked and I don't seem to have read this one on the channel before. So I got this comment from a very dishonest person, and you won't see the dishonesty right away, but here goes the first comment that was left, and I believe this was left on an asexual bingo video. So this person says, "It seems like real asexuality is caused by one or more specific receptor deficiencies involving oxytocin, vasopressin, and/or dopamine. I don't care about the present public relations on asexuality so much as the biology, since I consider the people writing the DSM-4 a bunch of idiots who are being led like sheep by drug companies, similar to most modern doctors. It'll be nice if some less invasive studies can be done to see what causes asexuality, maybe with fMRIs or safe hormone measuring tests. Lack of physical sexual arousal seems tied to parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, which might involve dopamine or vasopressin deficiencies, while aromanticism," he puts in scare quotes, "seems like it could be caused by lower vasopressin or oxytocin." I replied, "Nah, dude. Lots of problems with what you're saying here, because you haven't incorporated the basics of what asexuality is into your understanding. It is not anhedonia. It is not sexual aversion. It is not depression. It is not sexual anorexia. It is not a physical condition. And it is not diagnosable any more than you can get diagnosed straight or gay. Asexuality, yes, real asexuality, is the term for when a person doesn't feel sexually attracted to others or doesn't feel motivated by sex, etc. It's not lack of physical sexual arousal. It is the description of an experience of finding nobody attractive, not a diagnosable medical condition. 1. Sexual orientations do not require physical tests. They are by definition subjective experiences that develop words to describe them. That's all they are. 2. You are describing asexuality as if it can only be interpreted as a deficiency or disorder with a single biological cause or set of causes that explain it. Sexual orientation and attraction is far more complicated and individual than you're implying here for all sexual orientations. 3. Asexuality is not synonymous with sexual arousal-related symptoms. Your understanding of it, as so, makes your "we need to find the biological cause" demands very suspect. Furthermore, biological tests on asexual people's sexual responses have already been done in certain studies, and no measurable difference between asexual and non-asexual people was found. This isn't an island of unstudied population, and I'm sure you can find the studies done from a biological approach if you're actually interested in the topic. Your comment about real asexuality resonates with an air of intentional invalidation and dismissal, so watch the way you talk about these topics if that wasn't intended. Asexual people aren't making claims of biological specialness or any physical experiences at all. And for the record, it is the DSM-5, not the DSM-4 anymore, regardless of your opinion of its authors. I recommend accurately digesting the phenomenon you're observing before calling for tests that wouldn't actually measure what we're talking about here. So then, he went back to his comment and edited it, and then replied to me as if the edited version was what he had been saying all along, and this is obviously where it comes in that he's pretty dishonest. Don't worry, I called him on it. So the edited version is this. This is what he edited it to, and I'll point out the differences. He edited the original comment to this. It seems like asexuality, deleting the word real, is caused by one or more specific receptor deficiencies involving testosterone, he added that one, oxytocin, vasopressin, and or dopamine. I don't care about the present public relations on asexuality so much as the biology, since I consider the people writing the DSM number sign. He edited out the number. A bunch of idiots who are being led like sheep by drug companies. Similar to most modern doctors, it'll be nice if some less invasive studies can be done to see what causes asexuality, maybe with fMRIs or safe hormone measuring tests. Lack of physical sexual arousal seems tied to parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, which might involve dopamine or vasopressin deficiencies, while aromanticism seems like it could be caused by lower vasopressin or oxytocin, and of course, testosterone also plays a large role in the sex drive for men and women. That last sentence was added. And then he replies to me with this. Of course there are different types of asexuality. I thought I had made that clear in my post. I'm not trying to discredit any type. I know that low testosterone, compared to the average in persons given gender, will always, if not almost always, result in lower sex drive. Someone can say I'm not a scientist or an expert. Don't worry, I'm saying that. But if they block out or eradicate the testosterone in their body or see the evidence elsewhere that this causes lower libido, the evidence will speak for a logical mind. This lack of testosterone doesn't account for all types of asexuality, but probably for some, and maybe all non-libido types. The testes are a biological cause for the sex drive in males. If we didn't know this as a scientific fact, we wouldn't neuter male pets. To me, if there's a biological cause for the sex drive, there are only biological causes for its change in function or absence, and I don't see why it's such a stretch that human perception, action, and society are caused by human biology. Here is my reply to that. Quote, there are different types of asexuality. I made that clear in my post, end quote. Nope. You said real asexuality, and then conflated it with biological lack of sex drive or inability to feel pleasure. Asexuality is not a synonym for low sex drive. If you believe it is, and that is real asexuality, we are not having a conversation about the same thing. And it is because you are not educated on this topic. If you completely refuse to listen to us about what we are saying asexuality is, we can't have a discussion about it. Especially if you're acting like the real problem here is my inability to admit that sex drive is tied to biology. What you should do is acknowledge that asexuality is a sexual orientation, not a physical diagnosis of any kind. This is not unclear. It is not a behavior. It is not a measurable hormone-based condition. It is not a diagnosable condition. It literally means that a person has a subjective experience of not finding anyone attractive in a sexual way. Whether that is in addition to biological conditions is irrelevant to asexuality being a description of that experience. It is extremely irresponsible of you to announce that asexuality is probably caused by this physical problem, and aromanticism is probably caused by this other physical problem, and then act like this is based on any kind of scientific understanding of what we're even talking about here. If you don't even know what specific experience we're talking about and naming, why would you stroll in and try to explain it? Not to mention it's incredibly unscientific to look at a situation you don't understand and diagnose the people talking about it with a specific biological hormonal abnormality. Recommendations? First, learn what asexuality even is, and I linked him to one of my educational videos. Then, Read actual scientific publications that have been done over the course of many years, so that if you'd actually like to contribute to the discussion from a scientific/biological/psychological perspective, you won't appear laughably ignorant. And I linked him to a page that had a bunch of asexuality-related studies on it. And if that last sounds rude, I have to say, I'm just appalled that you waded into my video and name-dropped a bunch of receptor deficiencies that explain conditions which are not asexuality, and attempted to wedge them into this conversation as though nobody considered this before. Educated opinions are always welcome, but what you said to me was not only misleading, it was the exact kind of invalidating comment that leads to medical professionals and laypeople glomming onto misconceptions about us that lead them to try to fix us in ways we are not broken. One of the people in this video was put on hormones for a year because her experience was misunderstood as low sex drive. Furthermore, misrepresentations of us as disordered and diseased do lead us to far more insidious and terrifying invisibility and marginalization than I can reasonably elucidate here. Your flippant, unresearched opinion that we have receptor deficiencies is the same attitude that has led to real harm of people in my community. So I will thank you not to speak on this subject again until or unless you have processed the fundamentals of what asexuality is and why it's irresponsible at best, dangerous at worst, to hand out invalidating armchair diagnoses like you have just done. And I notice you're looking at my comments and adjusting your earlier comments to remove mistakes/faux pas, such as the reference to real asexuality and the flub on the DSM's name, as well as other minor changes. Please do me a favor and don't change what you said and then talk to me like you totally didn't express what I objected to. Retconning this conversation to make it look like I'm replying to things you're no longer saying is really intellectually dishonest. And it contributes to the overall lack of coherence and integrity your position holds. He replied, I've corrected my first comment so it reads more logically. I don't care who knows the difference between what I've originally written and my correction. I simply care less about being politically correct. With my choices of words, get lost in thought and forget that most people don't know me well enough to decipher what I write. In that same vein, just because I use the term deficiency, I don't see asexual people as broken, rather than getting into a drawn-out and fruitless argument over the likely reality that all sexual orientation is hidden in biology. I'm ejecting myself from this conversation. Have a good night. I replied, your corrections aren't adjustments to make the sentences more logical. They weren't insignificant changes. In one case, you removed the word real from your initial statement about real asexuality and claimed that all along you were supportive of different shades of asexuality and are currently only talking about biological asexuality, as if I misinterpreted you somehow, despite that what you presented for me to respond to was, it seems like real asexuality is caused by one or more specific receptor deficiencies. It's lovely that you don't see asexual people as broken, but if you don't see how framing the asexual experience as a hormone disorder absolutely will contribute to the unnecessary pathologization and medicalization of our orientation, you're irresponsibly disconnecting the theoretical from the practical. Framing asexuality as a hormone deficiency leads directly to justification for fixing asexual people, and practically speaking, it serves no more purpose than statements like, you only want sex because your hormones are making you think you do. If we lived in a world where wanting sex was seen as weird or maladaptive, boiling sexual attraction down to a hormone cause would necessarily lead to popular opinion and medical action dedicated to removing this troubling glitch from people who experience it, even if they value their sexual attraction experiences and want to be free to celebrate them. Turn that around to focus on asexual people, and you find that many investigators aren't interested in whether we can be healthy, happy, or satisfied as asexual people. They just define more typical sexual experience as normal, and aggressively push the narrative that we need to be coerced to embrace normality. But I'm glad you're not interested in arguing with me about this anymore. Your sideways snipes about your brave transcendence of political correctness and specious presentation of your oversimplified likely reality make me think this is not and could not be a fruitful discussion anyway. I decided to go block him because I didn't want to talk to him anymore, and doing that means that I had to go look at his channel. And at the time, I don't think YouTube does this anymore actually, but at the time you could see recent activity on the person's main profile page, and the last few comments that he had written were all these gross MRA things, men's rights activist if you didn't know, anti-feminist, red pill dialogues, all this stuff about how men are the real victims in society. So I want to read you just some of them, just for fun. I want to read you some of the other stuff that he had posted, because it's funny and also revelatory for the type of person that he obviously is. So here's just some of the stuff that he had posted. Almost all the videos of feminists on YouTube are younger women. Pre-wall women seem to push collective female hypergamy harder than the ones whose looks are starting to fade. Maybe young men engage in collective status raising in order to help them attain sex or a mate, while young women engage in collective male shaming in order to simplify mate selection and collectively popularize female victimization to facilitate traditional male gender roles rooted in protection of women and offspring and the male demonization of men. Feminists don't hate men, they're just the women most eager to culturally and mentally enslave them. And on a societal level, it really is a betrayal of every son ever born. But this seems like absolute proof that our conception of society as a tribe is a lie in relation to sexual dimorphism or sexual difference, and we are actually in perpetual ideological gender war. The girl who becomes a woman is valuable. The boy who becomes a man is a disposable pawn or a defective female. This is feminism. This is all feminism will ever offer to society. On another video he wrote this: I'm afraid of going outside, especially at night. I'm afraid that any woman can take a strand of my hair and use it in their home as evidence of a false rape allegation. Every time a woman looks at me, I'm afraid she's just waiting to pluck out one of my follicles and ruin my life for her amusement. I think this whole misandry thing, with women feeling entitled to use the courts to ruin men's lives because they're strong and independent, is wrong. Men are seen as objects rather than people, and I hate that. There's people my age and younger that are starting to notice this. It's been a problem for who knows how many years, and people are just starting to notice this. It's a huge problem. It just hasn't surfaced as a problem until now. I'm reading a book right now called Down Girl: The Logic of Misogyny. And there's some really interesting documentation in it about how rare it is for men to ever stand trial for allegations about rape, and how often, what about him, what about his future, she could be lying, she's a woman, so what does she really know, maybe she's confused, maybe she's emotional, maybe she regretted the sex, blah blah blah. And just how often, what about the poor man who victimized the woman? What about the rest of his life? Do we really want to ruin his life over this? The conception that we should fixate on exonerating men who did this and think about, what is the woman trying to gain? Maybe she's trying to get money, maybe she's trying to get attention, when in fact it often ruins the woman's life and doesn't ruin the man's life, even though he's the one who did the rape. This happens over and over and over again in the very, very few cases where it even goes to trial. Most often a woman takes a big risk in coming forward with a rape allegation. She knows she'll be disbelieved, she knows she'll be dragged around, called a slut, called a liar, have her motivation taken into question. And this is obviously not every single person. Yes, it exists that some people lie. Women aren't perfect, they're not all angels, obviously. So it really is mind-blowing to me that this guy is sitting here saying, women are out to steal my DNA and claim I raped them, and they'll be immediately believed, and the world is set up to make men victims and women are the new overlords. And it's like, we still don't even have actual like equality. Like, I don't know, it's really something that as soon as we kind of start to have options when it comes to experiencing assault or experiencing harassment, suddenly they're just like, oh my god, it's so dangerous to be a man now. Anyway, that was really a digression. Here's another whine he has about feminism. Feminism might be reformed by the men's movement with time, but there's no way to stop the underlying female hypergamy and how it actually dehumanizes men in relationships. Red pill relationships and marriages have the potential to last the long haul because pickup artists have evolved game to the point of figuring out how to make monogamy work. But this is indifferent to male emotion. If a male's greater predisposition to stoicism or emotional suppression is broken down by negative events, he can break his sense of being in control or secure in themselves, frame to their significant other, and destroy the attraction in their relationships. There is very painful reality that female sexuality is and will always be most attracted to a caricature of masculinity that ultimately dehumanizes all men. Men love women like women love children, which enhances the survival rate of the human race. And there will be some ridiculously strange times ahead as more men wake up to this. Men love women like women love children. Good Lord. Here's more. I am a millennial and I will never enroll in another college again. They operate on greed, disrespect the intelligence of their students, and are filled with feminist bigotry. I have no want to walk among idiots who think the substratum of my intellect is based on the amount of credits I've accumulated, or that I'm a potential rapist simply because I have a penis, based on an extremely false statistic about the amount of female rapes on campus being 1 in 4, the American college is as much an absurd cathedral dedicated to greed and misandry as it is a bastion of science, and it deserves to be treated as such by every real intellectual. Oh, he would know. More quotes. A woman not feeling cared for is a woman feeling too cared for. A woman with a higher sense of sexual value than her significant other will not feel sexual interest towards him and either make his life miserable or divorce. If she takes him back, she has no better choices in men and has decided to take an open wallet rather than someone she's actually sexually interested in. Female romantic love is opportunistic. Men love women like women love children. And this is not sexist if it's true. But it has to be repeated over and over because it's so painful for men to understand. Game in any long-term relationship requires a fundamental dehumanization of oneself. The acceptance of female hypergamy is actually not acceptance at all, but emotional suppression or denial of male idealistic romantic love. Whereas the blue pill man differs because he projects his capacity for romantic love onto women, believing that they feel similarly towards men. Remaining single is the most rational alternative with the least amount of pain. Hollywood would make better content if it didn't care so much about being politically correct. It's why I spend more time on YouTube, listening to people who don't give a fuck, than I do watching anything produced by the rich and gynocentric. If I got to know a woman that I thought was intelligent and not full of red flags, I'd attempt to live with her, but a big part of it would be study. I think that's enough of reading his crap. But you can see he has this really just brainwashed idea of the difference between men and women and believes himself to be just this high intellectual who knows all this stuff. But you can really tell he's got like red pill man YouTube brain rot. Just all these buzzwords coming out of his mouth. Hypergamy, hypergamy, hypergamy. Yikes. So, I mean, this is the level of intellectual honesty of the people that we're arguing with here, who are trying to boil asexuality down into a hormone disorder. Hopefully most of the people who are worried about someone who comes out as asexual and worried about whether we do have a hormone disorder are not saying it in this way to undermine it as a legitimate orientation. But most of the arguments that you have with strangers online who don't care about you, they are doing this. They are saying it because they want to invalidate you, or they want to boil it down into something that it is not. And the important thing in these arguments is to teach them that they aren't talking about asexuality. It's best probably not to argue with them on the science of it, because we're not talking about hormones. We're not talking about hormone disorders. We're not talking about less typical biology. I want to make it clear, again, even though I said it in the letter and I said it in the beginning, in the introduction, that those two things can coexist. Like, you can have a difference in your hormones. You can have an intersex variation. You can be trans. You can have some kind of illness, you can have a disorder, you can have all of these things and also be asexual, and not have those two things necessarily be completely separate for you. It's okay if, say, your medication that you take for depression or something that has happened to you in the past psychologically is interacting with how you see yourself in a sexual orientation way. That's your business. That is for you to figure out. That's for you to evolve through. If you are going somewhere else, it still remains that asexuality is a description of people who don't feel sexual attraction. It is not an explanation of why. And for them to try to drag that name for an experience that some of us are having for various reasons over into a medicalization is inappropriate, and it is something that has the potential to hurt us. So I do suggest that you either don't argue with these people, or you encourage them first to understand what asexuality even is, so that they understand that we're not even talking about the same thing. And with that, I will end this video. Tell me what you think of my glasses.